Today we're talking about the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. Folding phones are one of my favorite things to talk about. This device, I really have a lot that I want to talk about. So let's get into it. So this is more of a 2-month review instead than the typical 2 weeks to 30 days review. I wanted to take a considerable time with this device just because of how important it is, how different it is from its first generation, and how much it's changed and matured in just one generation of a Google folding phone. There are, of course, still things like any device that could improve, and we'll talk about those. But I won't be focusing on core specifications or anything specifically about numbers relating to the Tensor G4 or any other size and refresh rates, etc. I will mention them and how they play over everything, but there's a lot of videos out there by now that go over core specs of cameras and lenses and screens. This is more about what you should expect out of a phone like this. How is it using a folding phone? How does this one differ from other folding phones? And of course, some of the problems with it. And folding phones in general still. So to start with, the design. The design is drastically different. Last year's was Google's first generation. They went with a very unique design that really no one else went with. And that was more of a shorter but wider passport style device. And you can see here what else changed. Camera housing. Of course, there's more than just the dimensions and the camera that changed. The height changed, the thinness changed, the spine narrowed, which is the folding part here, the mechanism, the main core mechanisms decreased. The front screen is about the same size as an atypical normal smartphone screen. There's a lot, personally, I believe, to love about this device. This is truly one of those devices that is so close to being perfect that really its only problems are mostly software. So we'll see if Google fixes them or changes the game in how the software works. We are on Android 15 now at this point. Android 15 didn't have a massive overhaul. It was more refinement and squashing a lot of bugs and just a smidge more to the material use settings across the board. So there wasn't a sweeping change to Android 15, so there isn't much to discuss there. But the two major things that it did change with Android 15 was app pairing, which was in my personal opinion, was a huge thing missing that the competitors have. So essentially that means you can make a shortcut from the desktop of two apps when you're using the internal screen, and then this will allow you to open those two apps and then have one on the left and one on the right side of the screen. So now that is something you can do. You can make them, you can add them to the shortcut bar, or you can add it to anywhere on the desktop. And of course, another big improvement was battery life, shockingly. But other than that, personally, there's not a lot of different changes. There are some movement in Android as a whole to have a desktop experience. And since the Pixel 9 series does have video out, these are future-proof to really support that, like DeX that Samsung offers experience. It's a lot lighter solution. It's not baked in, but you do kind of get a desktop-like experience with Android 15 now. Software is what makes this device. Software is what makes Pixel devices in general. It's just the core Android experience is so good on that with the Pixel launcher that is so minimal and so close to core Android that it just makes everything so smooth. And then Google does a great job on top of that with these feature drops or pixel drops, adding new features. And there's new features to the Pixel 9 series, like the Add Me functionality where you can take a picture and then step in, somebody else hold the camera for you, and then it essentially crops you into a group photo. Zoom features, and of course, Gemini being a large thing pushed. AI in general is being pushed so hard on smartphones right now. But of course, Gemini and Gemini Live, which is next level, even over the normal Gemini or Gemini that you can get with a paid subscription. To the Screenshots app. It's essentially an app that consolidates all your screenshots that used to fall into a Photos app, now are segmented into its own app. And some still don't particularly like it. I personally myself, with as many screenshots as I take and things I compare and screenshots I take to remember stuff later, I like having that dedicated area that does not clutter up my photos gallery. And even the introduction of private space. This is another feature that has caught up on the Pixels with the competitors. Private space is kind of like Samsung's Knox, where you have a dedicated private directory that's locked with a different password, and you can store the apps in there again, or private files, etc. There's just so much I could go on and on about the software. Google does something magical with their Pixel launcher and just how they're operating Android, which is what you get when you get an OS directly from Google that isn't too heavily skinned. There's a lot of videos out there praising how good the Pixel launcher itself is. Other things to discuss is the G4 processor. I said I wasn't going to go over benchmarks or anything, but of course it's something to discuss, and its concern with performance and its longevity. Over 2 months, have never felt any performance lag or stuttering from playing games to watching movies to even doing dual apps of one app playing video while maybe playing a game on the other side of the split screen with the device open. So longevity I don't think will be an issue with the G4. Now, obviously, if we're talking, I believe this thing can get 7 years, if I recall right, of updates, full OS updates. Hard to tell, honestly, at this point. That's a lot of years of OS updates. I would imagine that the failure with this type of device is going to be something with the hinge or something mechanical failing first on a folding phone before the software does. So I wouldn't worry about performance on the G4. It has been very smooth, and packed with that is great battery life on the G4. That was something Google really focused on with the G4, was really focusing on battery improvements with their new processor, and you can definitely see it. And that goes across the board with any of the Pixel 9 series phones. But if you're familiar with the OnePlus Open at all, that was a phone that I loved in 2023. It was the absolute best phone, and it's still hard to top that. It's still a great phone, and I think Oppo or OnePlus did a great idea of not being under that pressure of forcing iterative updates when there really wasn't that much of a change, even with the Snapdragon processors. But what happened with that was the popularity of that form factor, and other manufacturers went that way too, but that has kind of matured the whole folding format of the wide, big tablet, or make the device into a tablet type of form factor, has matured now into what is very similar on the OnePlus or the Oppo, which is about a 6.3 inch external screen, which is very usable and is in range with almost every other just slab style phone. And so it feels like a normal phone using it. There is days that I don't even open it. If I need to compare two apps, I'm going to open it. If I'm playing a game, I'm going to open it. If I'm watching YouTube, I'm going to open it. There's just some things that have transitioned me into using the device in an open, bigger screen style solution. And then the rest of the time, I'm keeping it closed and it feels like a normal phone, but it gives me all that flexibility. And that's what's so great about folding phones. And that's why I love these folding phones so much, no matter what form factor, even Samsung's narrower screens. It's just having all those capabilities. And I will give kudos to Samsung, really truly only being the other competitor out that still offers a stylus with their folding device. I think this is a missed opportunity with almost every other manufacturer that's making folding phones. If you're making these bigger folding phones, not like the Z Flip or the Moto Razr, which opens from a clamshell to a normal size looking phone, but I'm talking about the ones that have the big internal screens, manufacturers, even Google, are missing the opportunity by supporting a pin on the internal screen. I think it's such a great way to just combine as many resources or as many professional options into these folding phones. There's a way of combining two devices that you had to carry for so many years if you really wanted that smartphone and then a large form factor tablet, and combining that all in one. Really the next iterative jump I want to really see, and I'm hoping this actually comes from Google directly, baked in Android, and I think they're starting to get there, and that is a desktop-like experience. Once that's here, I can even argue the case more that maybe with some adapters, portable monitor, mouse and keyboard, you would only need this. And that, to me, truly, I believe is the future in slimming down all the items we have to carry with us, because we have one item that is internally wise, already has enough power. Even the G tensor processors from Google have substantial enough power to run even normal desktop applications, or especially any type of web-based applications. But there are, of course, like any phone, a couple software things, especially that I think Google could improve on or look at their competitors. And I think they need to look at their competitors to really see how they can improve multitasking, because with the internal screen, all you can do is 2 apps. Now, I think one of the absolute best forms of multitasking is from the Oppo One Plus, the Canvas solution they have is still the best for multitasking. It gives you an option to shrink the screen and be able to see 3 apps at once, or have a sliver of the app over on the corner of the screen, easily able to switch back and forth and really still see 3 stacked apps beside each other. So there's things Google could do to improve that in the software department. And then I think is even more of an odd thing that Google is doing is, if you have the device in this form factor or this orientation, so they work great together, they're side by side, but then things become weird when you put it in horizontal mode and bottom instead than side by side for the multitasking. There's no way to resolve that. There's no way to switch it. If there was ways to switch it even after they rotated, that would be fine. But you are literally forced to the apps being in a up and down orientation when you put the device, basically sideways. Things that I think Google could really work on in the software department on the device, like folding phones get left a little short from the Ultra line or the Slab Pro line of phones, especially in the camera market. The camera's great on this, don't get me wrong, it definitely will suit all your needs. I just feel like it could be improved just a smidge more. Use those optics, shrink those optics to something similar to what is in the Pro Slab into the folding phone. I know these devices have very little bit of space in them already, and we're trying to keep them even thinner to make them more attractive to users to have a experience that feels like a regular phone even more. So I get that there's not a lot of space in there to put optics in, but try to get as high as a pixel count, as high as a pro camera into these guys as possible. It is a great daily driver. It has 120 hertz refresh rate. It has plenty of RAM and storage options, and the processor isn't an issue. Battery life is great. You match this thing up with a Pixel watch as well. You get a couple other extra little features, putting, Pixel line of products together. And great overall with the Pixel line in general this year. The Pixel slab phones really feel like a step up, and we can see that in sales. This was one of the first years with the Pixel line of phones. They've had a pretty large marginal increase. Now, are they up to the amount of sales that Apple or Samsung have? Not even close yet. But Google has done a lot of things with this phone. There's a few little things they can keep on improving. Maybe we'll see those in feature drops, but that's it for now. Leave some comments about your experience, if you've had any with the Pixel line or the Pixel Fold, how you feel, and I'll see you in the next video.